Caron to one of the most popular winter sports resorts in the French Alps and one of the most popular stops on the tour. A killer called L'Alpe d'Huez. American Andy Hampston won his only tour stage here back in '92. One fellow who says he's actually saving himself from mountains like these, Miguel Indurain, who had a little bit of trouble yesterday. 5 mountain climbs in today's stage, anywhere from 4.5 to 15 kilometers in length. Some are tougher than others. One is toughest. L'Alpe d'Huez has a slope of over 8%. You'll see how steep that is when we get there. And keep an eye open for 21 hairpin turns. It's enough to make you dizzy. In the Tour de France, there are 4 categories of climbs with different levels of difficulty, which we'll explain shortly. Right now, we're 91 miles into stage 16, most of it over rolling terrain, one relatively easy climb. Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwin, it is all yours to pick up the pace of the race.
Well, thanks, Adrian. And this is the village of Mons, and the breakaway of 14 that has dominated today's racing so far are now hanging around 8 minutes in the lead. At one stage, they were 12 minutes ahead. I'll give you all of their names because one or two surprises in this breakaway. But we have Roberto Conti. He's the best placed rider in the breakaway, 11th overall. But that doesn't seem to mean much when you're comparing it to Miguel Indurain. He's almost 18 minutes behind. The other best placed rider here is the rider who finished second yesterday, Roberto Elli. He lies 13th overall. And again, we're receiving messages from out on the course. Riders are stopping in their Tour de France. 2 of the Castorama boys have gone. They're Emmanuel Magno and Laurent Desbiens. The youngest man in the race, Marco Seppellini, he's given up. Wilfred Peters has gone, and the latest one is Alessio Galetti. So another 5 men have retired, and the winner, by the way, yesterday, Eros Poli, having a bit of a yo-yo day today. He's just got back onto the big field, we can see here, having been dropped on the earlier climb of the Col de Menet. And this breakaway going away after some 8 miles today on the small 4th category climb. They're the shallowest of all the mountains when they're 4th category on the Côte de Prieuré-Delarac, and where the climb was won there by Roberto Conti ahead of Perini and Thierry Marie. There are 3 riders in this breakaway of 14. Onto the Col de Menet, and Ronan Pensek was the first man over the top there ahead of Camargo, Conti and Elli. And now we're watching them as they try to bridge on the flat roads between the Col de Menet and the rather tough 2nd category climb of the Col d'Ornon. It's an interesting move, Paul, but again, Indurain not mustering the troops to chase it down.
Well, it's no worry for Miguel Indurain at the moment, because as you said, these riders are over 15 minutes behind him in the overall standings. But it is a worry to the Festina squad, because those 2 riders, Roberto Conti and Alberto Elli, are a possibility of taking away the 2nd and 3rd placings overall of the Festina riders, and that is why it's the Festina team today who are the ones who are actually putting the pressure on at the front of this group at the moment.
Well, there's the tall figure in the pink jersey there of Alex Zula, and he hasn't really forced himself into this race at all. He has not offered any serious attacks. We expected that he would have done, but no, Alex has just been content to follow wheels this year. We'd like to see something out of him, at least one big effort in the mountains. It may come on the final climb today, this breakaway, although they have some very good climbers in it, not least Roberto Conti. I would think that they will still try and bring it back on the slopes of Alpe d'Huez, because it is such a hard climb, and as always, there are literally thousands of people on that climb awaiting the arrival of the Tour.
Well, that's for sure, but you see at the moment the actual impetus has gone out of this breakaway a little bit, because 1 or 2 teams have given the order to their riders not to actually contribute to the success of this breakaway. And obviously one of those riders not taking part is Roberto Torres, the Festina rider, who's been a great dynamiter, if you like, of the race so far, because he's the man who on a couple of occasions has launched the Festina squad into action. He's stopped working with the breakaway, and 1 or 2 others. So there's a little bit of miscontent in the main field, in the main group here at the moment, and they really are looking round to see if the other riders will start to contribute. And that is why I think as we get closer to the Col d'Ornon, it's all going to start to come back together.
Well, you just caught a snap come through the screen there, and the abandon now of Lordolino Cubino. He's a rider who one might have put down to win the stage today. He's a great mountain climber, but yet another star of the Tour de France has given up. He's the leader of the Spanish Kelme team. And we really are, I don't think I can remember a Tour, Paul, when we've lost so many leaders of their teams. A lot of these teams are now going around without a head.
In fact, the riders here could have had an easy first part of the race today and taken it nice and steady before they got to the first time, and this break of 14 riders went clear almost at the start. So the riders are the ones who are actually making the race extremely difficult.
Yes, as we look at Roberto Torres here, in fact, this has been a very quick start to the day today, and I'm sure half of the field never anticipated. That's why they started to give up so early on. They are running around about 9 minutes ahead of the best time the organisers expected them to arrive at the towns. So you can imagine along the route there is a quick reshuffling of schedules to try and keep up with the Tour de France again today. This is where we are at the moment. We've been over the Col de Monet, and now we're heading in to the Col d'Ornon. That's the next peak along the road. So at the moment then, this breakaway is hanging on in there, a lead of 8 minutes, but the mountains, as you can see, very much in front of them here in the Alps.
Well, Phils, the leaders look ahead to their second climb, about 8 minutes behind. Miguel Indurain is protected very well by Team Banesto. Only one of 2 teams left out of the original 21 who still have all their riders. Luc Leblanc, Richard Virenque, and Armand de las Cuevas keeping a close eye on Indurain as he watches them closely as well. Just over halfway to the summit of Col d'Ornon, the second climb to the top in today's mountain heavy stage. Degrees of difficulty. Now, Category 4 is easiest. Categories 3, 2, and 1 get progressively tougher. Everything is based on length, steepness, and road surface quality. One more category, or category, above and beyond belief. Only few mountains in Europe get that distinction. Col d'Ornon is a Category 2. Shouldn't be too tough for these riders. Phil and Paul are here to take them up the mountain.
Well, we're looking down from the helicopter now, which has started to fly as the weather has cleaned up a little bit. And the same riders are out in front, but they're down to 12 now from 14. We've dropped to Jojo Furlan, Thierry Marie, and it's largely been due to the fine accelerations being delivered by Camargo from the Kelmay team, but we're now looking here at the pace being set by the Lampre rider Roberto Conti, and alongside him on our left is little Alberto Elli.
And these are the 2 riders who were in the main attacks yesterday on the slopes of the Mont Ventoux, and it's so quite normal for them to be at the head of affairs again today. Surprisingly enough, though, the Festina squad let these 2 riders slip into a group of 14 men who got clear early on in the race, because these 2 riders could actually upset the overall standings and the placings that the Festina squad have had. They tried to come back into contention early, but they really couldn't eat into the lead that this breakaway had built up.
The last time check we got was 9 minutes, and slightly higher than that in fact, but there are signs that the bunch is now chasing. And again, we're sorry about our bad pictures here at altitude. We've gone down to the motorbike shots now, but you can see the cloud lying on top of the mountain here, and it could well be worse by the time they do finally arrive at Alpe d'Huez. But conditions changing literally by the seconds on Alpe d'Huez. Light rain blowing through, sun coming out, and then more mist dropping in. So it could be okay when the riders get here. This is the main field. And I say they were chasing, but they look, Paul, as though they've got themselves back into regular order here. And again, the Banestos sitting up.
Well, as you can see, the field is bunched right across the road, and one of the riders just to the right there was Rolf Aldag, so obviously the pressure is not really on a great deal on this climb if Aldag is still riding at the head of affairs on a mountain pass. It's nothing to say against the ability of this rider, but normally if the pressure was really on a slope like this, he wouldn't still be there. This is where the race is happening at the front. These riders have got to go over the top now of the Col d'Ornon. They'll plunge down into the valley, along the valley to Bourg d'Oisans, and then they've got the climb of Alpe d'Huez in front of them.
Well, they're approaching the summit of the Col d'Ornon. We go a lot further down to catch up with the peloton. That's Aldag to the far right, Paul was telling us about. He's a pretty fast sprinter on the flat, but he's not a great climber. As we go back to the summit for the sprint, and it looks as though Camargo, with all his accelerations, has still got the strength to go first under the banner. He deserves that. He's put in some terrific attacks on the climb, chased over the top by Elli and by Conti, and Roberto Torres tucked in there as well. Only 12 of the 14 men now beginning the plunge down, and the rendezvous with Alpe d'Huez itself, and then I'm sure they won't climb that in a group of 12.
Notice how Banesto doesn't let anyone near Indurain, the man in yellow. Their job now is to protect him, keep any fatigued rider away from the unthinkable happening. At this point, that would be some type of accident. Up ahead, a group of 12 riders is now heading down Col d'Ornon.
These are the leading dozen on the way down the Col d'Ornon into the valley below. Then they'll race along to Bourg d'Oisans. 25 kilometers to go, I think it was, because we get the 20 kilometers to go usually in the valley. Now, Miguel Indurain did not enjoy his descent of Mont Ventoux yesterday. He was on a sharp right-hander like that where he completely misread the corner and almost took the shortcut down to the valley.
Just goes to show how difficult and dangerous it is. In fact, just as we thought, that was Perini who went right off the edge there, and he had the, in fact, incredible reactions to flick his bike back up onto the tarmac, and he's managed to be quite safe, and he'll get back into contact. But that's the kind of accident can happen so easily on a descent in the Tour de France.
It's a horrible feeling, Paul. I know you've done it yourself, and you were a great descender, but when you lose control there, the feelings you grip those handlebars.
Bill, you guys never lose control, do you? Tell you what, serious moment with that fresh in mind. Same situation as we saw yesterday. Remember when Indurain's back wheel locked up because the brakes grabbed? This is literally living life on the edge. Look at the skill of this rider. Inches from disaster. You'd better be on your toes or you could be flat on your back in the Tour de France. The man in yellow and his entourage now coming up over the top of the second mountain, well on their way to that sleeping giant, L'Alpe d'Huez. After almost 110 miles, we're in the town of Bourg-Oisans at the base of L'Alpe d'Huez.
And down below, a breakaway that formed after only 14 kilometers today. There were 14 riders then. They've led throughout the day. The maximum lead has been in excess of 12 minutes. And we're now approaching the first part of Alpe d'Huez. The last time check we got, the breakaway was losing ground, but it's still in excess of 7 minutes. Now, there's only 12 of them left, and let me give you the names straight away in this leading breakaway as we watch here one of the two Kelme riders ask for a drink. And this rider is Camargo, the Colombian, who launched a tremendous attack on the Col d'Ornon, which shook out two of the riders in the breakaway, Thierry Gouvenou and Giorgio Furlan. They're not here, so we're down to 12. Latest time checks coming up, 8:44 they're saying. Charlie Motte has gone clear on the top of Dornon. He's been joined by Ralph Aldag and also by one of the riders. There's three of them chasing there. And then we go back about another half a minute to the field. So the breakaway members are Roberto Conti, Perini of the ZG team, Roberto Elli of the GB team, Wayne Herrera from Kelme, Yogi Muller of Mapai, Roberto Torres of Festina, Bruno Kengialta from the GVIS team, Camargo we've just seen also from the Kelme team, Santa Ramita from ZG, Udo Boltz from the Telecom team, and Ronan Pensek of the Novamai team. This is the scene now, Paul, as we start the climb. Now, the big question we're all asking, can they survive to the top?
Well, I think they've got a very good chance. In fact, Roberto Conti and Alberto Elli must be the two of the strongest riders in the group here because they were at the front of the race yesterday. In fact, one rider who would like to get some revenge for the Mape class team is the man at the front at the moment, Yogi Muller, whose team leader, Tony Rominger, had to retire a couple of days ago from a very sad illness that struck him before we went into the Pyrenees.
It's Torres who's setting the pace. He's the climber. We're going to see immediately riders in trouble, and we can see them in trouble as we go further down the slope. And I think we've got Udo Boltz, the last man on the string here, hanging in. But look how they spread eagle the field already.
This is the climb up to the first corner of the Alpe d'Huez. Then they'll see the sign 21 corners to go. That's the scary thing about this mountain. You get a time check or a corner check all the way down, counting up to the top here in the Alpe d'Huez. And it looks as if we've already got an explosion in this group that's been together since the early kilometers of today's stage. And the two men setting the pace at the front are, in fact, Roberto Conti and Alberto Elli.
Well, Lomano has dropped immediately there at the start of the climb as Mauro Santa Ramita, the Italian on the ZG team. He's gone now. As we see on the inside, we've got Elli setting the pace. Conti, well, Paul Sherwin has a feeling that Conti might be the man to watch out for in the pink jersey to the right here. He is a well-proven climber and a very good rider in previous Tours de France.
Well, those two riders were excellent yesterday. They were, in fact, able to finish with Miguel Indurain. But one rider who hasn't done a great deal of work today, in fact, is this number 96, the Festina rider, who is Roberto Torres. He was at the front of the race a couple of times through the last few mountain stages, and he hasn't contributed at all to the work of today's breakaway because he's been playing the soldier for the Festina squad.
Well, Udo Boltz, number 134, has certainly taken, and he's actually going to try and liven this up a little bit because he's gone. Boltz has put in the first attack on the first corner here It's very steep at this stage, Alpe d'Huez, and it goes on for a few corners at a great gradient of about 1 in 9 before it shallows out a little bit. And that's a very good acceleration by Bolton. He's going again, and Conti's quick to realise it too, and Torres goes on the far side. So Torres, the pure climber, has issued an acceleration that the others must now follow.
Well, that was a great move by Torres, and he's the man, as I said, who's not put a great deal of work in, but in fact it is Roberto Conti who's made the counter. They were attacking on the left and the right-hand side of the road, and Conti, who I thought for quite some time was going to be one of the strongmen of the break today, has gone clear.
So Roberto Conti now has made his move 8 miles from the finish on the summit. Last night we sent Lon McCarron to find the dark side of Alpe d'Huez. He came back this morning with a story from just about every side of this mountain.
It's 2 a.m. on Alpe d'Huez. The first Tour de France rider isn't due to pass through for at least 14 hours. But that doesn't matter to these early bird fans. Some of these fans began camping out for this race 2 days ahead of time. They endure the unending drone of cars and trucks motoring up the mountain, the odd angles at which their tents are pitched, and the close proximity of their neighbors. They do so because these fans understand what a special part of the Tour de France this stage is.
It's sort of been a long time. I've wanted to get over and see this race because it's the race of all races for bikers, and to actually be here on Alpe d'Huez, the mecca of cycling, is really, really exciting.
They know that no matter what else a rider does, if he takes Alpe d'Huez, he becomes an indelible part of Tour lore. The scene that surrounded Andy Hampsten 2 years ago is typical, and the fans here go absolutely bonkers for every rider up the hill, shouting and pushing and waving flags in their faces. Well, you think it's distracting? Consider the alternative, finishing that 6-hour ride up the steep grade with only the sound of your own breathing to break the silence. No, the riders actually welcome the lunacy here on Alpe d'Huez.
You know, they are insane, but they love the sport like we do, you know, but they stay there the whole day and they picnic, and everybody's coming, even if you are behind or in front, they help you up, you know, so it's very nice.
Well, they're going crazy. I mean, the people there is very excited, and also they're giving good motivation for the riders, and I think this is the way, you know, I mean, they're giving good motivation for to go uphill.
At first light today, the anticipation level rose considerably as fans could now see how many others had made the trek to this mountain of mountains under the cover of darkness. It is an international gathering of cycling zealots. Joe, you're camping in a Rolls Royce. What the heck are you doing here?
I actually want to see Tony Rominger, but now it's bad luck. I can't see him, but we have still Yogi and Alex Sule.
We've got 3 Australians still in the race, and we'll be right behind them as they're coming up the hill. We'll be yelling at them and, you know, urging them on to get up this thing because it's just one hell of a climb.
What kind of shot you got?
Hurry up.
Hurry up. None of these fans will wear the yellow jersey after today's stage, but they will go home with the knowledge that Alpe d'Huez is as much for them as it is for the cyclist.
All right, Lon, see if you can find some peace and quiet. Roberto Conti still on the climb of Alpe d'Huez. The chasers are breathing down his back. Will he make it to the finish first? Enthusiasm for this sport, the passion for the Tour de France is about to reach its peak. The riders who survive this uphill climb are going to know nothing but pain, but the reward will be the feeling they get from these fans. For them, this is the ultimate moment in sports. Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwin are watching the uphill battle.
Here's Conti. He's opened the gap, Paul, and now he's got to settle in and suffer a bit more to hold it.
He really has got to suffer because it's a long way to the top of the mountain. I just got one time check of Roberto Conti over the main pack at the moment. He's got 8 minutes and 50 seconds lead. So if he can just keep going and not crack as he gets towards the summit of this mountain, he's going to walk away with a great advantage today, and he will move up definitely into the top 10 in the overall standings, and it may well be that it'll be 5th or 6th by the end of today. And strangely enough, the Festina squad, although we could see them at the bottom of the climb trying to speed it up a little bit, they should have been a lot more responsible in chasing down this 14-man breakaway earlier on if they were worried about the overall position of riders like Richard Viron, Luc Leblanc and Pascal Lino.
Absolutely, they gave it far too much of a lead, but that's the way this tour is this year. It's a very strange tour to predict who will come out and attack each day, and that's the way we like it. Here is Hodge anyway, bringing the race towards the foot of the Alpe now. The main field with the Benestos right behind him, of course, and Miguel Indurain. It It'll be intriguing to see if Miguel tries to just ride away from everybody and go off in search of the men above him. But he's leaving it very, very tight indeed. It takes the top riders around about 40 minutes to climb from bottom to top. It'll take the last riders about an hour and 10 minutes. It's that steep and that hard.
Well, Conti looks very good here at the moment. He's got a good rhythm going, very, very fast. He's got over the first part of the climb, which is quite steep, and he's getting into a second part where he can actually get a bigger gear going and start rolling it along. I was very surprised to see that Alberto Eli couldn't match that attack, because Eli rode an excellent race yesterday on the slopes of the Mont Ventoux. In fact, he was one of the riders who finished in the front group and finished second on the stage, in fact, so he's obviously in great shape. But Conti put a great attack in here, and going back through my records, I can't remember actually Roberto Conti ever having a victory as a professional rider.
Well, I'll pass on that one, Paul. I'm not too sure myself. But I've seen him put up some great individual performances, especially in the Tour de France, when he was on a different team for a long time. But he deserves a victory because he's always been aggressive. There's the devil on the left. He's become quite a character on the Tour this past 2 years. And he follows the riders around. They spot him every day. He always stands in the same place. That's around about the 15 kilometers to go point of each day's stage. Even the police who escort the race give him a toot on the horns as they go by.
Well, still on the bottom slopes of the Alpe d'Huez here. It hasn't exploded as much as I expected it would do. In fact, Miguel Indurain was quite happy there to sit in third or fourth place in the main pack. This is Giorgio Furlan, the man who was the dominator of the early part of this year. In fact, he won so many races. He rode away from the rest of the international field, but now as we've got later into the season, he seems to be having quite a hard time. In fact, he's had a very quiet Tour de France as we join the man at the head of affairs, Roberto Conti, who looks as if he's riding away with a great stage victory here to the top of the Alpe d'Huez.
Well, Roberto's best ever finish was 14th in the Tour de France last year. He's also finished 18th, so he's a very solid stage race rider, but I agree with Paul Sherman. I can't remember him ever actually winning a race, but you never know. There's always one or two small races around the world where he might have popped up. He's been a pro, in fact, for 9 years. This is Thierry Gouvenou. He was left by that group of 12 when it was 14, in fact, as we shoot back up to Conti now, setting the pace on the early bends of Alpe d'Huez. I mean, I never cease to be amazed when we watch these riders climb these mountains. We know how steep they are. We've driven up them earlier in the car, and in the case of Paul Sherwin, he's ridden up them. Yet you look at these climbers, and they just seem to fly up them.
Well, I'm in a privileged position now working with television, because I was never able to see how fast the climbers went up the mountains when I was actually riding, because I would have been a lot further back, probably riding at the speed that we just saw Thierry Gouvenou trying to go up this mountain at the moment. It always amazes me the speed that the climbers can actually go up a hill. It's really incredible. They're a special breed, they really are.
Roberto Conti trying to climb to his first ever stage win. We are on l'Alpe d'Huez. Frenchman Richard Virenque in second place overall, wearing the King of the Mountain jersey, trying desperately to gain on Roberto Conti up ahead and gain some time over Indurain in yellow.
But as we watch the leader come up here, it's amazing to see that Miguel Indurain has not countered the move of second overall Richard Virenque. That's how confident Indurain feels. He's won this Tour. He has a nice margin of 7 minutes and 56 seconds, but you really don't let your second man overall out of sight unless you are feeling extremely confident. And of course, there is still a mountain time trial to come before this race is over at the weekend. There's Richard Virenque, and he's making the climb, trying to get on turn to Pantani. And we've still got a number of riders in between. These riders are a long way behind that breakaway, don't forget, which is shattered now all over Alpe d'Huez and riding in dribs and drabs up the mountain. This is the second man on the circuit, as far as we know, Ronan Pensek, as he tries to ride. He's riding about 40 seconds behind the leader on the course, Roberto Conti.
He looked to me very much like a broken man, and I don't think it'll be too long before he is overtaken by some of the attacks that are going on behind. Conti himself now is starting to suffer a little bit. You see, he made a very good move to begin with, but now he was rolling his shoulders quite a lot when we saw him there, and it's going to be very tough for him too.
Little Camargo of Colombia still riding his own pace and still well up the front. He could get a high finish. But now Virenque has found his rhythm. He seems to be riding much more fluidly. He's Getting this hill, as Stephen Roach always used to tell me, the rider who won the Tour de France back in 1987 for Ireland, he loved this climb, and he always used to say that it's very hard at the bottom, Phil, he says, but it gets easier towards the top. Well, I can tell you, I tried to climb it one day on the bike during the rest day with Stephen. I finished up in a car.
Well, it might have got a little bit easier for the top for him, but certain riders like myself found it hard all the way to the summit. Although I must admit the last 2 kilometers aren't so bad because there are so many people there actually encouraging you that you roll along, and you realize when you get to the sign 2 kilometers to go that you've made it, and it does make it that little bit easier. But I think up until then it's not quite so easy. This is Charlie Motet about to be caught by Richard Virenque, is another rider who escaped on the descent of the Col d'Ornon just a little bit earlier, and Motet trying to get a little bit of a lead in his last Tour de France to try and get up the Alpe, a climb that he's battled out so many times when he was fighting for a high overall placing.
Well, he's worn the jersey in the Alps before, the yellow jersey. He lives in this area, and he obviously had something in mind when he attacked just before the summit of the Col d'Ornon, when he was joined by Ralph Aldag on the way down. But he's been caught now by Virenque, who stepped up the gas, and he's into his rhythm. As we look down on the group there, which is what's left of the main field, trying to reform a little bit. It looks a bit larger, I thought. And the Motet dropping back through the cars. Richard has gone on, but Pantani has gone on that little bit better. He's out of sight right now.
And now Roberto Conti at the front of the race, starting to suffer a little bit. He's put a lot of effort into this breakaway today. They've been away since the early kilometers. After 9 kilometers this break went clear, and now he's suffering and paying for all the work that he's done early on. But he realizes, starting this climb off with a 8-minute advantage, he has to keep a very good rhythm in order not to get caught and try and get another Italian victory at the top of the mountain here. Remembering a couple of years ago, Gianni Bugni had 2 victories at the top of the Alpe d'Huez, and Bugno no longer in the Tour de France this year, so maybe it'll be another Italian, Roberto Conti, who'll get a victory at the top, one of the most incredible mountains, the shrine of all climbers, the Alpe d'Huez.
The main thing on the mind of Richard Virenque right now, to gain time on Miguel Indurain, the overall leader, trailing Virenque in this stage. Atop l'Alpe d'Huez, we've been keeping our eyes on Italian Marco Pantani, who has been very fast on every major mountain we have seen. He hasn't always timed his climb just right, but he's looked very strong. Let's go back to Phil.
And now you can see the difference in the speed. This man is traveling up the mountain. He really is a young talent, isn't he? I know he's got a bald head. He's only 24 years of age, and he is a superb find. And I think one of the real pure climbers. We've seen lots of strong men like Indurain, Paul, but we don't see Indurain as a pure climber. But here we seem to have a fluid man in the mountains.
Oh, he really is. And as I said a couple of days ago, the pure climber, the race of climbers, really has disappeared from the sport of cycling, and they've come back over the last couple of years. And this man is one of the most incredible climbers I've seen since Lucho Herrera came onto the scene, the Colombian riders. And it's so rare nowadays to have a European climber that we're quite shocked by the revelation of Marco Pantani, who walked away from the field in the Tour of Italy this year, taking 2 of the big mountain stages, almost taking a 3rd one, but I think a little bit due to lack of experience and maybe some bad advice from his teammate Claudio Chiappucci, who made him attack 100 kilometers from the finish into a block headwind, and that really was quite a silly move, because if he'd waited, I'm sure he could have taken that stage as well.
And he's now past Tilly Gouvenou, who was part of the original 14. He's now ready to carve his way through the remnants of the breakaway that was here and with us at the start. There were 12 at the start. They've been spread-eagled on the mountain. But it's an awful tall order yet again. This is the 4th time in this year's Tour de France. The Pantani has started late and tried to catch the men who started early. He's failed every time so far, but I'm sure one day he'll succeed, and he's still got a few days to go in the mountains anyway. Chance to see the yellow jersey group of Rouet pacing Indurain. Well, it was only a brief chance, wasn't it? But now gone back up to the leader, and it looks as though, in fact, now Roberto Conti is in the town of Huez, which is around about 2.5 miles, 3 miles from the summit.
Pantani making a difference here. Looks so much stronger and faster than even Conti right now. Here's the Michelin race summary. Group of 14 riders escaped early in the race and had a 9-minute lead on a group led by Indurain at the bottom of l'Alpe d'Huez. Out of that group, Roberto Conti left his guys behind and is now pumping through the hairpin turns. Marco Pantani has left Indurain below and is now flying up the mountain, taking time from the top challengers. Let's get right back to Phil.
And so it's under the 4-kilometer now for the leader on the course, Roberto Conti. He made his attack soon after Alpe d'Huez began, and it looks like it could be his stage now. Pantani, although chasing from the Indurain group, is still a long way behind him on the day. He's given him, I think, again, too much head start over the mountains. The rider who is, in fact, second on the road, we haven't seen too much of him, is the Colombian Hernan Buenahora. And he's riding his first Tour de France and looking set now to be the only man left who can challenge Conti for the finish. There's Indurain down there. As we see, in fact, Jean-Francois Bernard here looks to be in a little bit of trouble now. He was the hero when he paced Indurain up here a couple of years ago, but he's done nothing for Indurain today, and he's losing contact with Indurain's group right now. 112 sitting on the back here is Thomas Davey, riding a very good first-year Tour.
In fact, also number 41 there, a man who was lying 7th overall until yesterday when he lost something like 15 minutes, is Barney Rees. Sad to see him disappear because he'd ridden so well in the Tour de France this year and looked as if he was going to repeat his top 5 place from last year. Nobody really missing from the top 10 overall here today. You can see just behind Miguel Indurain there in the yellow jersey. The pink jersey, number 61, is Alex Zula. Pietro Ugrimov is there. Pulnikov is there. Luc Leblanc. And Marco Pantani is a little bit further up the road.
The one rider I haven't noted, Paul, but doesn't mean he's not there at the moment, is Armand de las Cuevas. I haven't spotted him for the Castorama team, and we'll keep an eye out for him. But the pace being set here by the faithful little Spaniard, Ramon Gonzalez Arieta, in favour of Indurain. Indurain seems to be very content to just ride this mountain today. And, you know, I find that a little bit strange. Maybe he is under pressure, who knows, because he's allowed Richard Virenque to go clear. And Virenque is gaining time on Indurain, the first man to do so, I think, since he took over his yellow jersey in the time trial.
Roberto Conti will be the first man to the top of L'Alpe d'Huez, but all eyes, including Miguel Indurain's, are on Marco Pantani, who may gain over 2 minutes on Indurain's overall time.
Pantani still continues to move smoothly forward. And a little placard tells us they know him too here on the slopes as the Italian flank chases him up the slope. All Italians are running alongside him here, and he's found the strength to accelerate. Maybe he doesn't want the water down his neck, Paul.
May well not be, but now is the time when Miguel Indurain is going to take over the reins of the race, and he's going to start to set his own pace as they come out of the town of Huez d'Oison. And there Miguel is at the front setting the pace there. It looks as if the Kelmy rider has just been swept up as well, and Pantani is eating his way past each one of these riders one by one as he goes up the slopes of the Alpe d'Huez. He's going to have a big regret tonight, though, that his Carrera team didn't take part in the chase to try and put it all back into contention. And look at this. As soon as Indurain goes to the front, puts the acceleration on, everybody is in his wake. And there you see Armand de las Cuevas has dropped off the back there, fighting to stay in contention. Pulnikov a little bit further down in 4th place there, hanging on as well.
Well, Luc Leblanc is trying to get a little bit better on de las Cuevas. Luc Leblanc only needs 33 seconds on this rider here, de las Cuevas, and they'll swap positions tonight, and Luc Leblanc will move up to 3rd. Leblanc gritting his teeth and hoping he can hang on. And so too de las Cuevas. He's gone. Now we go back up here. The rider is second from the back here. In fact, he's gone in front of Zula in pink. That is Luc Leblanc. He is looking for 33 seconds tonight to take 3rd place off de las Cuevas. And it looks to me as though Zula is beginning to crack now as he watched the other 3 fly away behind that man who seems to have something special in his engine.
He really is an incredible rider, and very rarely have I seen Miguel Indurain ride so confidently either, because he really has been an exceptional rider in this year's Tour de France. He hasn't worried about the little accelerations of the climbers. Richard Virenque, don't forget, is a little bit further up the road. I would think about 30 seconds ahead of Miguel Indurain at the moment, but as soon as Indurain opened up the throttle, the group of 10 or 15 riders that were with him just literally exploded, and these are the last 2 riders who can stay with him. Luc Leblanc, number 91 in the blue jersey from the Festina squad, and the man here at the back, number 57, Vladimir Pulnikov, who at the moment is lying in 5th place overall, but it looks very likely he's going to lose that to his teammate Marco Pantani by the end of tonight.
So as we go back towards the finishing line now, an Italian is going to celebrate the victory here on Alpe d'Huez. The grimace has become a smile as Roberto Conti, and we think it's the first ever bike race he ever won as a pro, and it might well be, because he's going to enjoy this, my goodness me. It's his 9th year as a professional. No signs of pain on his face now. It's been a brilliant climb of Alpe d'Huez for him. He's led from the bottom. The professional look over the shoulder to make sure they're not creeping up. They're not. They're miles behind. 6 hours, 6 minutes, and Roberto Conti keeps the Italian record here. He's only the third Italian to win on the top of Alpe d'Huez, and he's going to cherish this memory for the rest of his life.
About 5.5 minutes back down L'Alpe d'Huez, Marco Pantani continues to pour it on. Look at him go. Italian climber Marco Pantani in his first ever Tour de France. He is becoming a threat to Luc Leblanc, Richard Virenque, and Armand de las Cuevas, the only riders in striking distance of Miguel Indurain, who is behind Pantani on L'Alpe d'Huez. Incidentally, while we were away, Hernan Buenajora, the Colombian, finished second behind Roberto Conti.
Well, this is Pantani, though. I think there are still quite a number of riders in front of him, but it's difficult to know just how many. Our cameras have been fully committed on the Alpe today because so many riders have been climbing by themselves. And this man is climbing with his own effort, but not by himself. This is Indurain, and as we go back now, Udo Bolt is one rider we never passed. Another one is Alberto Eli. They're lining up, so I make it Udo Bolt in the third place finish here with Eli. Eli was the man that got second yesterday. He might make it third today. Difficult sprint this. We've seen Greg LeMond misjudge it a couple of times, but come good in the sprint. Now Bolt is going to leave it as late as possible. It's still going slightly uphill. Watch behind. Perini is coming up as well. He's done a good climb today. This breakaway called the bluff of the big men today, and it succeeded as Eli takes on Bolt for the sprint finish. And I think Bolt is going to get it too, and he will. Good finish for Udo Bolt, and Eli gets fourth place, and Perini, when he gets to us, will be over the line in fifth.
The hero on the hill has to be Marco Pantani. Paul, how about that effort?
This is the man who has really ripped up the Alpe d'Huez tonight. He's taken back almost 5 minutes on this leading group here, coming up to the line. Marco Pantani, look at the speed of this man. He hasn't given up all the way to the line. He's really been flying up the Alpe tonight.
And Pantani, 5 minutes down though on the line as the race swings in behind him, but Pantani has got the stage in 8th place and best of the rest, as it were, because he wasn't in the breakaway today. The gendarmes trying to get the cars one way and the riders the other, and Roberto Torres, the teammates, bringing the first finisher of Festina in today, and that will keep them well up with the good colours in the leading team in this race. There's Virenque now not far behind, so Virenque's also coming through. It'll be interesting to see just how much time Virenque does gain here on, indeed, Miguel Indurain. He's going to try and have a go at Camargo. It's a long sprint, though. It's gently uphill. I don't think he'll get up here. Now, I make Camargo finishing the stage in 10th place, and that will put Virenque in 11th. More importantly, though, he just gets points there for 11th place in the King of the Mountains. And now Paul is checking his watch. Oh, well, he didn't. He came good in the end with that late attack. He's gaining some time, but it won't be a lot. Indurain now coming in with Leblanc, who is gaining time over de las Cuevas and could well, with a little bit of luck, claim third place overall tonight. Luc Leblanc, Kulnikov hanging on by his shirt tails just about, but I think he may have conceded his place too to Pantani. So a little bit of shifting around below Miguel Indurain. But what's he gained, Paul?
I mean, that 35 seconds on the line that Richard Virenque gained over Miguel Indurain, but the man now who's losing a lot of time a little bit further down the mountain is Armand de las Cuevas, who's just coming round the corner now, stuck, I think, in the back of the cars there.
So then the results of stage 16. Roberto Conti, the Italian, in 6 hours, 6 minutes and 45 seconds, covers 140 miles. Miguel Indurain was 12th. Frankie Andreo, the last American still hanging tough, was 122nd today. Overall, Miguel Indurain looking a little bit labored in yellow today, as a matter of fact. Virenque, Leblanc, de las Cuevas stay where they are, but Marco Pantani has now moved up to 5th within striking distance of those 3 challengers. Giancarlo Perini, at 35 years old, one of the oldest riders on this tour. This is the result of today's effort. Pure pain on L'Alpe d'Huez. Still on the stage, wearing yellow, Miguel Indurain, but doesn't quite look as fresh as he has for the past previous 8 days. He remains the leader of the Tour de France, however. The tour with 4 more mountain stages that has traveled over 2,000 miles with 469 to go. Be sure to join us tomorrow as we start stage 17 at the bottom of the mountain in Bourg-Oisan. Travel 90 miles to the top of Val Thorens. Coverage begins at 3 p.m. Eastern, 11 p.m. on ESPN2. Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwood.